Hey guys, I just went ahead and fully finished Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It took me about 16 hours to do so. I just played on the normal difficulty for this one because there is some stealthy bits, quite a few stealthy bits, and I'll be honest, I'm not the best stealthy guy, as you can see from the gameplay. I'm not the greatest stealth man out there, but let me give you the pros, the cons, and then my final verdict of the game. My first pro is that visually the game looks incredibly good, which is kind of to be expected from the fact that they have forced ray tracing on the PC version. I can't speak to the Xbox version at all, but on the PC version, they have forced ray tracing, which is definitely a bit of a hot button topic. A lot of people unhappy about that, and understandably so, especially the people that are on, weaker PC rigs. I totally understand. But you can't deny that visually the game looks great. All of the lighting, the reflections, and especially the animations, like the facial animations on all of the characters, but Voss, the main bad guy in particular, is just insane. It almost enters like Concord Uncanny Valley levels of just like, ugh, it kind of freaked me out how realistic some of those faces looked, man. But yeah, visually the game does look very, very good. I think that the puzzle design, getting into some of the gameplay, I think the puzzle design is pretty good here as well. I didn't have a lot of issues with the puzzles. Some of them were maybe like a 6 on the difficulty scale of like a 1 to 10 difficulty scale. I didn't really find any of them to be all that tough. They give you plenty of information that you can find in the environment in order to solve the puzzles. And overall, I thought that the design was actually pretty good. I'm not the biggest fan of Indiana Jones, I'll be the first to say, but I really love Tomb Raider games and I really love the Uncharted games. And so I'm kind of using those to base, my thoughts on the game. And I think that they do a serviceable job with the puzzles in this game, and it's on the same level as like Tomb Raider and Uncharted games. I think that they're all around the same level in terms of the puzzle design. Not so much in terms of the gameplay and the combat, but I'll get to that in the cons. But I think the puzzle design was pretty good, and the story, the main story, I actually found to be pretty interesting, man. It really does feel like you are like actually playing through a movie a lot of the times. And while I thought that the pacing struggled a little bit in the midway, for the most part, I thought that the pacing was quite good. And especially, just talking about main story stuff here, I thought that the main story was quite good. I really didn't have a problem with it, and I thought that the ending went absolutely insano, crazy, and I really enjoyed that as well. Also think the sound design is really good here. Like, they don't have Harrison Ford, obviously, to do Indy, and that's really just because Harrison Ford, he doesn't like video games. He's like an old man. He's a grumpy old dude, so I can't really hold it against him. But instead, they have Troy Baker doing his damnedest to do a Harrison Ford impression, and I think actually for the most part, he does a pretty damn good impression. I had several people in the streams saying that they couldn't even tell that it wasn't him. I could start to tell that it was Troy Baker whenever he got louder. Like whenever he was talking at, a normal level, it sounded almost exactly akin to, Indy. But once like he started to raise his voice or yell or something like that, I was like, okay, no, I can kind of hear a little Troy Baker, slipping in here. But overall, I think all the characters are voice acted well. Gina, Voss, the other German dude, I don't remember his name. Voss's other guy. I thought all of them were voice acted very well, and the sound design in terms of the music, I mean, it got me all sorts of copyright strikes, which is never a good time. But they do have the OG music, from the Indiana Jones movies, which I thought was really cool to see as well. While I may not be a fan of Indiana Jones, I really did like the music of those movies, and so it was cool to see multiple of the tracks from the movies kind of come into play here in the game. I really enjoyed it. But let's get into the cons. I am really not a fan of the level design in the game. So essentially, what happens for most of the game is that you get into a pretty large scale zone. And then in that large scale zone, there will be collectibles, there will be like enemy encampments, there will be, side quests and stuff for you to solve, and there's quite a lot of side content. I think if you just beeline the main story, it'll probably take you around 11, 12 hours. But if you do the side content, I could easily see you pushing, over 20. I was at 16 and I didn't do all of the side content, but I did a decent bit of it. But I'm just not really a fan of this level design because I've really felt that it hurt the pacing of the game very badly. I think that once you're spending all of this time like going around in the open world, like I'll give you a great example, right? You almost do like a hitman-esque thing in the game where you get these disguises, and those will allow you to, easily navigate certain areas of the level. So maybe you get a soldier disguise, and that will easily allow you to navigate into a military compound. Well, the problem is it doesn't tell you where these outfits are, or if it's supposed to, it's bugged. And we'll get to the bugs because the game is quite buggy. But if you're supposed to have some sort of indicator of where these outfits, these disguises are, I couldn't find it anywhere. And if it wasn't for chat telling me, I would have had no idea. So there are several times where side quests and stuff would have me going to a military base, and there's like 30 soldiers there, and the combat is not great, which I'll also get to in the cons. So there was really no possible way for me to actually navigate through here. Like, you can't even stealth through. You would go into a room and there's like 6 dudes. There's like just no way in hell that you could even stealth through there. And you're supposed to have the disguise, but you don't have the disguise. And even if you continue the main storyline, I wasn't getting the disguises that I needed. So that was a very weird like gameplay decision. Like, you're just supposed to explore these giant areas, I guess, and just come across them. And especially one of the outfits, it was like you had to go around the back of a guard tower, look up, and use your whip to climb up the back of a guard tower. But like, the back of the guard tower was up against the wall. It was like a little crack that you squeezed in. So I literally have no idea how you would know to do that if it wasn't for my chat telling me, because I never ever got a message and it wasn't marked on my map at all to do that. So, and that outfit ended up being, very necessary for me in order to navigate many of these areas. So very strange, like, level design. And I just think the game would have been better if they went with, like the Tomb Raider and Uncharted games, and you just had your narrative, your linear narrative. I think they maybe tried to pad out the length a little bit by trying to add all of these like explorable like areas, and I don't really think it benefits the game, at least not for me. I think it only harms the pacing of the narrative. And I also think that just in general, it would be one thing if you were exploring in order to find like some really impactful upgrades and gear and stuff like that that would really change the game, right? Or get like completely new abilities or something like that. But you don't. All you will, like, the best things that you'll find will be money or like adventure points, and you use that if you find these little books that can increase your skills. But all it is like, oh, now you do more damage by punching dudes, or now you'll do more damage with a weapon, or you'll have more ammo with a weapon. So it's not even necessarily like you feel a drive to explore these levels, because the rewards that you get are not really that interesting at all. The next con I would say is that yes, the game is very buggy. There's quite a lot of bugs. Several times my quests were not completable. So Jesus is like, I don't know. I feel like I'm in a loop or something after Stalker 2, but there were several quests that were unfinishable. I even had people in my chat saying like, yeah, just so you know, you can't finish these right now, which this is a $70 game, guys. This is a $70 game that's being released. This is unacceptable. This has always been unacceptable. I know that I got a little bit of pushback on the Stalker 2 review for saying that it was unacceptable, but Just because other games do it, I don't think that makes it acceptable. I still think it's absolutely unacceptable behavior to release a game at full price and have things like quests uncompletable. But there are several quests that are uncompletable. On top of that, there's just a general jankiness with the game. You know, your companion will just kind of like float along, or their legs will fly up like over their heads. They'll just be jumping back and forth. That happened many times in the game. And the next con I would say is that the combat is just not that great. It's really not that great. At first, I was having a great time with it. I was like, this is so much fun. Probably for like the first hour and a half or 2 hours, I was having a really good time with it. And then I realized, oh wait, this is it. This is all that there is to the combat. It's just like the same animations, depending on if you're using a one-handed or a two-handed weapon. It's like the same animations. Guns feel absolutely atrocious to use because the moment you fire a shot, every single enemy, like in the whole area, just beelines it at you. So that feels really bad. On top of that, most of the guns take like if you have an SMG, it will take 5 bullets to the head on normal difficulty. 5 bullets to the head, dude. Not even wearing an armor or anything. Like absolutely just unacceptable. I think they maybe did it because they didn't want people to just shoot their way through all the levels or something, but it ends up just feeling really bad, dude. I also think that the key bindings are really weird on mouse and keyboard. Other people echoed this sentiment, so it wasn't just me, but I thought that the just all of the keybinds were really funky. Like in order to reload a gun, you hip fire the gun, like you left click, which is like so weird. And like F is your whip and E is your interact, but if you press E is also how you swipe between different things in your journal. And if there's anything around you to interact with while you're in your journal, if you press E to try and swap like to the next thing in your journal, you'll just pick up the stuff that's around you or interact with the stuff around you. So that's like very annoying. E is also the way that you like swing your gun from being an actual like shooty gun to being a melee weapon. So it's almost like they just took the controller bindings and put it on mouse and keyboard and did not give us the ability to just individually map different actions and buttons, because it'll be like, okay, I could rebind this, but then I'm rebinding like 6 things. So you know, some of the things make sense for being on this button, some of these don't. This might sound like a minor gripe, but it was something that annoyed me the whole game. I was just like, why are these buttons the way they are, you know? And many times I found myself being like, how do I do this? Like, why do I need to hold right click and then press Z or C in order to lean? But that only worked if I had an object that I could throw or a gun that I could aim. If I just had like my fists out, I could not figure out how to lean at all. Like doing that wouldn't let me lean. Leaning is obviously very important if you've played like a first person stealth game like Dishonored. Leaning is obviously a very important mechanic. And then it's like, oh yeah, if you want to swap between, if you want to heal, then you have to drop your melee weapon. Like, why do I wait? What? Why do I have to do that? You know, that could be very impactful in combat. Just a lot of like weird jank with controls, and I couldn't tell like what was bugs and what was controls. It just doesn't have a very polished feeling. Especially when you consider this is a $70 game. And depending on your region, like, it could be $100, right? I had many people being like, is this worth $100? I'm like, God, no. Which I guess does finally, you know, lead me to my verdict on the game, which is overall, I think this is a good time on Game Pass. I would never ever recommend somebody to buy this for $70. It is just not as good as the Tomb Raider series, and it's not as good as any of the Uncharted games. And it really does feel like we have Uncharted at home, which is quite ironic because Uncharted started off as kind of an Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider ripoff. But I think that just goes to show, if you rip something off, but you do it really well, I don't think people will really care, because just across the board, every single Uncharted game is significantly better, despite all of their age, than this Indiana Jones game. They all have a much higher level of polish. They all have far more cinematic moments. And another thing I'll say is that a lot of the cool stuff that happens in Indiana Jones is cutscenes. You're not even interacting with it yourself. Almost all of the cool stuff is cutscenes. There's like 2 scenes through the entire game. One of the which is the ending where I was like, okay, I'm finally actually playing the game through some of this cool stuff. Whereas Uncharted and Tomb Raider, but definitely Uncharted, do a great job of making the player play all of the coolest sequences in the game. So it's unfortunate, I really want Microsoft to have some of these W's, man, but I just think that they're rushing these games out too fast and they're not putting the level of, polish on them that Sony does. And as a result, these end up just feeling like almost like rip-offs or just early access games that are kind of Game Pass bait. They're here and they're, relatively unfinished and they're pretty overpriced for what they are, all to try and get you to subscribe to Game Pass because then it makes it a good deal. And that's my thoughts on this game is that it's a fine game if you're gonna play it on Game Pass, but I wouldn't recommend buying it. So for me, I'm going to give the game a solid 5.5 out of 10. For me, 5 is average, 6 is above average. I think that this game does a lot of things very above average. I think the visuals, the sound design, obviously the music and the voice acting, the motion capture, and the overall main story, I really, really do think are significantly above average. But unfortunately, there is just an overall buggy and janky feeling to the game that you can't really shake away. Add on top of that the fact that I'm not a big fan of the level design where it's just this big zone and you're kind of just supposed to find a bunch of these things on your own, whether that's because the markers for those things are bugged or maybe you have to find some piece of lore in order to mark it on the map. I'm not sure, but none of it was ever marked on my map at least. And obviously, situations like forced ray tracing, where a lot of people are literally just unable to play the game because of the performance. And I think that all of those things just bring it down significantly. So I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. But let me know what you guys think. Did you really enjoy the game? Are you big Indiana Jones fans? Is it not for you? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, especially on the combat, because man, that combat seemed really good at first, but they really just did literally nothing to innovate on it as the game went on, and as a result, it's got very stale, very quick. All the juggling of the different melee weapons and shooting people like 5 times in the head in order to kill them just got a little bit silly for me. But let me know what you guys think. I always love hearing your opinions. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for hanging out. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see all of you in the next video or stream Rooney. Bye bye.